Before I continue on this video, I just had a new visitor here, so I just want to show you real quick. See if we can get him in here because he's kind of skittish. Little kitty. There's been 4 roaming around. I tend to have a lot stray cats in my backyard, and that one's pretty cute. Very scared of me, though. Yeah. Okay. At where we left off at subsidies and how government subsidies are used to alleviate the problems that the diminishing demand that capitalism has inherent to it creates. Again, subsidies are just like using interest rates or like all this quantitative easing that you hear about if you don't know that's what that means. Taxation is another way. These are all ways to either stimulate the economy or sometimes even cool the economy. Rarely done to cool the economy. I don't think it's done since the 70s to stop inflation. The easy So to kind of point out how that works, we were talking about agribusiness and big agro, corporate agro, if you will, geo-corporate, and how these subsidies are meant for them. So when we talk about welfare, oftentimes we think about the poor and blaming the poor for welfare, but really think about that. The welfare are not organized in any way whatsoever. I'm sorry, the poor are not organized in any way whatsoever, and I should include myself in that, of course. We are not, creating super PACs asking for welfare or marching down Washington or anything of that nature, nor do we have any lobbyists that were pulling together our minimum wage job checks to obviously get into Washington, D.C. for us and get, welfare going on a state level or whatever the case may be. Who is pulling for that? Who is playing in the lobbyists? And how is that such an effective program that has never been touched since, the 60s? That would be agribusiness. That would be the growers, the major growers. They are very cognizant of the fact that there's not enough demand dollars out there for all that they supply, and that without the government taking our tax dollars and directly putting it in their pockets, they would go out of business. Now, it's a little bit indirect in the sense that they're using the impoverished people and putting them, giving them food stamps in their hands or these cards. And but in essence, it's the same thing. It's taking the tax penny and giving it right to the corporation. Well, obviously using the impoverished. Now, you're saying that they're helping the poor there at the same time, and obviously we know the arguments on what welfare does to the poor on a psychological level. But if you really think about it in general, the boom bust cycle that is caused by this inherent paradox or logical fallacy involved with capitalism that causes these cyclical boom bust cycles all the time. It's not that it looks bad on a chart that makes this so devastating. It's that the poor are terribly displaced and hardened by it. They grow sick. They have to work too hard. They lose jobs. They lose houses. They go homeless. Each cycle takes, a huge hit into what is a growing population of poverty. Some could argue that we are as high as 80% of our U.S. Citizenry that is below the poverty line, depending on where you put the poverty line yourself. But one thing you could tell for sure is that no matter what Keynesian or stimulus policy that a president or a central banker is coming up with, none of them solve this problem. And the biggest evidence of this and who it's hurting, what these cycles are really impacting, what population they're really impacting, is that graph that we see all the time, which is inflation versus medium standard of living, or rather, average income, and or even minimum wage. And if you take it from 75, it's a big split. You're looking at inflation on a steady tick, and income, medium income, average income, going nowhere basically. So, what's the problem with all this? What is Marx pointing out with this diminishing demand that we talked about in the first video? And again, there's no way to avoid this. This is the very mechanism of how a capitalist has to act to be a good capitalist. You got to make a profit. That's how it works. Okay? So it seems capitalism seems to have a lot of success in being able to distribute very consumer type goods, very expensive goods, but in terms of basic necessities of life, it leaves a lot of people out. In our day and age, there is absolutely no reason, with our technology, our know-how, and really our oneness around the world, our ability to communicate and organize very quickly around the world, there's absolutely no reason that there should be homeless, starving people anywhere in the world. Simple as that. We've all seen the meme, there's more houses in the United States empty than there are homeless people right now. So, how do we solve this systematic problem? What is the problem? Capitalism seems to be good for consumer goods, higher end goods, non-necessity goods, but basic necessities to have a life. Okay. Capitalism doesn't seem to supply those to everyone in the same way or well or effectively or even high quality of goods, because 80% of us are not living in quality homes and are certainly not eating quality food. I know very few people that are eating quality food or getting quality health care or alternative health care, preventative health care. True preventative health care, not Western medicine preventative health care. So, the system, there's going to be no monetary system that will ever solve the systematic problem of our greatest challenges in life or as a society: poverty, homelessness, things of that nature. We have to admit to ourselves that capitalism cannot supply this for everybody. And that is not an equal playing field. And so those that are displaced by capitalism, it is not their fault. They did not show up to the poker table with the same amount of chips that everyone else did at the poker in the poker tournament. So it's not an even playing ground. And no one's going to go for progressive distribution of wealth where we get an even communism situation. But what we have to acknowledge is that everyone deserves three things at least, I would say: decent housing, decent food, decent health care. After that, you can go to the capitalism market. You can go to the open market, get a job, work 40 hours work week, and buy a Mercedes, go on vacations, even buy simple luxury goods that aren't really, super fancy. But if you need that TV, if you need, depending on how much you need of those consumer items should determine how much you need to work, not your existence on this planet. That's very different. You shouldn't have to work 40 hours a week doing nonsense. Okay, if you're working 40 hours a week building your own garden, that's something, right? If you're doing nonsense for 40 hours a week just so you can feed your family and be separated from them, okay, just to live, not to buy a Mercedes, just to feed yourself that week. Okay, this is the problem with capitalism that Marxism is pointing out, that the laborer, that the whole economy is based on the lower income laborer. It takes advantage of it, eats it up, spits it out. So, that's slavery in essence. What comes after those three? After housing, food, and healthcare? Maybe education? I don't know. I'm open to that. But those three have to be supplied to everybody and in a very decent way. So it can't come from the government because we know what the government's bureaucracies do. We know how government programs work. Okay? It's not going to be a solution. But we also know that it has to be organic, and we have to be able to sell it to both the government and to the corpocracy that we live under, the global corporate network, because we're not going to get rid of them some sort of revolution and save everyone before that. It has to be sold to them. Now, right now, there's a lot of organic communities that are being created here in Denver, and I'm sure in other places around the country. And I'm super excited about them because this is an idea my professor had in college, and it just needs to be taken to the next level, if you will. So the idea is, right now, organically, people are just going out and creating communities of tiny homes. Some of these tiny homes are for sale, so they're buying huge pieces of parcels of land straight in the city, sometimes outside the city, in the mountains, right downtown, whatever the case may be. Organizations are buying lots, and they're building tiny homes and filling those lots with tiny home communities. Some of them are giving the tiny homes away free to homeless people. Okay, some of them are just being sold. This is an alternative to buying a $250,000 house, getting into a mortgage, and having to put yourself into a 40-hour work week slave just to pay for your subsistence, just to pay for the place where you live. Okay, these tiny homes are beautiful. They are a different kind of way of living. If you're not used to this concept, you may want to watch some videos on YouTube, but they can be made better than your, 3,000 square foot house right now, but consolidated to only what you need. So this is something that's happening organically, and we're only talking about living right now, but you can easily see how with just a little bit more effort, we can certainly supply quality food, organic, non-GMO, full of nutrient food, because that would be the most efficient thing to feed them. If you're feeding them empty calories, they're going to get hungry every half hour. Makes no sense whatsoever. And that is something that they can participate in, building these houses as well as growing the food. That's going to be their job, is building their life. They're going to have leaders in these communities who are there already that doing that for them. Okay, so that's a situation that's really beautiful, and it's happening organic. It's just sprouting up everywhere. So the next level, I would say, is to be able to sell it at a government level so that we get more sponsorship, more ingenuity, more labor behind it, and it becomes a true essence of our society. Well, that seems fairly simple to me. We look for a municipality, a county, some small section of government, and we look for their soft spot, basically. Maybe it's homelessness. Maybe they're sick of the homeless in their downtown area because it's causing drugs. Maybe it's drugs. Whatever their hotspot is, what they're trying to get rid of is based because of poverty. Whether it's homelessness, drugs, whatever the case may be. And so we can sell it to them on that essence that we are creating these communities where we are redirecting this bad energy of homelessness into homes where these people are creating their own communities and becoming productive members of society and feeding themselves and housing themselves under incredible ingenuity through engineering plans that are being supplied through whoever is doing this already. What we're selling to the municipality is whatever tax you are giving to corporations or people, individuals on that city level, offer a tax credit to people who want to volunteer time and labor into these communities. Just like a charity where you would give money, but in this case it would be labor trade as a write-off for your taxes. If we get one municipality to be an example of that, and obviously generate a lot of people who want to do write-offs on their taxes, mostly the companies within that municipality, they will start to lend out their labor force 1 hour a week. That would be a huge write-off if you run 100 staff, 100 person staff, 50 member staff, 10 member staff. It all adds up. And we're not just talking muscle. I mean, if that's all you can do, dig in the dirt, that's a beautiful hour for you and for the community to dig our gardens. But maybe you're a computer scientist. Maybe you're an engineer. Maybe you're a teacher. You have a skill that you can offer every week, 1 hour a day. And so the idea is the individual, somehow we get a tax credit from some sort of government agency, and then sell it to the individual and the corporation to lend their labor resources 1 hour a week and get rid of a lot of their capital gains taxes. That becomes a beautiful example for a federal level. And then we don't have to go to the government to ask for this. We're going to go to the corporations to ask for this as a test project at that municipality and say, now Johnson & Johnson, now DuPont, now the worst companies in the world, whatever the case may be, you're looking for a way to hide capital gains, not have to hide your money across seas so that you can avoid these taxes, okay? You can afford an hour of labor from every member of your staff. It needs more trade-off to give away an hour of paid work, which is what, $30 an hour to $15 an hour to $10 an hour if you work at McDonald's, versus that hour of making money and capital gains that you're going to have to pay at 30%. In other words, if I'm McDonald's and I send all my staff out for an hour before work or whatever the case may be, and I pay them to do that, what is that, $15 an hour per? In an hour, McDonald's could make $1 million in every window at 30%, at 20%, at 15%, which would be Donald Trump rates, right? At 10%, you're saving $100,000 an hour. What corporation would go for that? Then the corporations, just like Big Agro, will lobby this in, and we have a solution at an organic level where we now have an alternative to having subsistent lifestyle, incredible health, incredible food, and alternative, ingenuitive, cutting edge homes. Where you don't have to be homeless for the rest of your life and be in these communities, but if you like these communities, you could do it for 5 years and work on your project for 5 years so that you work 2 hours a day building gardens with a community and spend the rest of your day doing whatever your mind leads you to. Think about the ingenuity that would come from this. All of a sudden, the brains that are just being wasted in poverty right now have hours and hours and hours of healthy time to think and to apply their minds, it's endless from there. This is where Marxism leads us. When you take it at an intelligent level, rather than the level that they want to drive you to, which is this dichotomous, let's fight each other, capitalism versus Marxism debate, communism, blah, 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 blah. This is the type of thing that we need to apply. We have to understand the fundamental shortcomings of capitalism and then solve them.